Hello, listeners. Welcome to The Mayor and I, a weekly podcast.
Episode 30.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I did the thumbnail
That's a long time.
before, yeah.
Episode 30 of The Mayor and I, me, Lindsay Khan, talking to Nick Buckley, MBE, about current events happening in our country, in our world, that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Nick, I know Nick is interested in some of the stuff I talk about, not all of it. And
No more concerts you go to.
Richard Ashcroft, that was a really interesting one. Just to say, if you like the video, it was a thumbs up and subscribe, is it?
Yeah, subscribe to us, thumbs up, share it, comment.
And Nick, congratulations, because you've hit on YouTube over 5,000 subscribers.
We have.
Well, that's very kind of you, but I
have.
think it's mainly you. You also have had a number of videos recently that have hit quite large numbers of viewers. So you did one last week where you were talking about the Manchester airport scuffle, where the chap was kicked in the head, and I think you got something like 70,000 views on that, which is phenomenal. So
for our little channel, it's a huge. It's the most watched video I've done on we've done.
Yeah. I mean, you did that one on your own.
Yeah.
That one. I think you were interviewed by Talk TV.
Talk TV, yeah.
Yeah. So that is phenomenal. Really, really well done. And it's clear that, I think when you and I started having these chats some time ago, the number of viewers were not massive.
Yeah.
But I think clearly you're reaching an audience now. People that want to hear what you've got to say, or we've got to say about certain things, and I think that's quite interesting, and it makes me feel good that people are interested in what we're talking about. I think there's a lot going on at the moment. We're in July 2024, and we've seen a lot happen in this month, and in particular the tragedy in Southport of 3 children, literally young girls, being stabbed to death. And I know you came on Twitter, because my son showed me your Twitter posting afterwards. You were enraged about it, furious about it. And there've been a whole number of events in July. That obviously by far, it is the most dramatic and horrific thing that's happened in the month. But there was the officer, army officer stabbed in Kent recently.
More than stabbed, hacked almost to death.
There was the incident in Manchester airport where the full details have kind of been released now, but basically they were, I think they were Asian youths, I don't know if they were Pakistanis, attacked police officers, and then that resulted in a particular clip being shown of them being kicked in the head. Under Labour already we've had 3,000 boat landings of illegal immigrants since Labour took power,
and 2 street riots,
and two street riots. We've had the Hare Hills riots, which we talked about in previous weeks. So we seem to have had a lot of incidents culminating in the tragic killings in Southport of those kids in this month that seem to be related, and I'm going to be quite frank about this, to brown people, to, we think, potentially Muslim people as well. And we're going to talk about this now, I think, but what I seem to see as events happening as a result of cultural differences between the way we, the British, live our lives, and cultures that have come into this country and are now, there are certain behaviours that seem to be happening which are impacting on our way of life in this country. Is that a harsh or an unfair thing to say? This is my observation, and I'm being very candid. I'm not going to couch this and say individuals or whatever. We are seeing things happening here. We know the person who killed the children in Southport we believe is a Rwandan or born of Rwandan parents. possibly second generation, possibly first. There's some speculation about that. We know the Hair Hills riots were predominantly Pakistani Muslims. We know the stabbing.
I thought the Hair Hills was mostly Romanian.
No, there's only 492 Romanians in Hair Hills.
They were the catalyst of it.
They were the catalyst.
But then I do believe other minority groups jumped on board.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So as I said, I was born in Hair Hills, so I know most of the people there are Pakistani, Asians, Muslims as well. So we're seeing these things happen. The media doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to say the reality of this, or nobody has said this is about different cultures impacting on our way of life. Am I being unfair? And by the way, we're often called racists on this because of our chats. That's what I'm seeing, and that's how I see it. How do you see it?
That's correct, but it's a very simplified observation of what's happening. And as humans, we always look for the easy answer. We always want to see. Jordan Peterson calls it a low resolution version of it. So we don't want to go into the detail. Brown man stabbed somebody. Brown man bad. Therefore, all brown men are bad. And we need to avoid going down that.
I don't think I said that.
No. I'm saying that's an example of low resolution thinking.
Yeah.
And we do that because it's built into us to look for simple answers to complicated problems. It helps us stay alive. You see a wolf. Well, not all wolves may kill you, but we've learned wolves bad. Keep away from all wolves. What's happening in our country now is a combination of many, many things. I wrote about it today on social media. Immigration, mass immigration has just been the final straw. Society has been dying and collapsing for many decades now, and it was started 100 years ago. So some of the problems are culture related, some of them are related to immigration, and some of them have nothing to do with the two items I've just mentioned. So this nutcase, I believe, is a second generation born from asylum seekers from Rwanda, which is a black country. I think it's even a Christian country. And then he goes, 17 years old, goes to a play group during his 6 weeks old age and stabs up to almost a dozen kids, 3 dead, another 6 critically injured, 2 adults critically injured. That's not culture. There's no culture in the world that is their culture. The easy answer is he's mentally ill. Well, again, that's low resolution thinking, that he's mentally ill. Many people are mentally ill. Doesn't mean they go stabbing people. So it's more than that. So for me, part of why we have second generation immigrants in this country who were born here, raised here, doing these atrocities is because A, they don't feel they belong. And they're probably right about that. They don't belong here because they belong in Rwanda. They belong in Pakistan because they're trying to juggle 2 lives, which is a Western British version of life and a more traditional ancient homeland life. And that's difficult, and that's confusing, and that can create mental health issues. And then when we've got social media with hate preachers and things on there, it's quite easy for that person saying to themselves, well, the reason why I'm unhappy, and believe me, through my teens I was unhappy. I could never figure out why I was depressed. But that's called being a teenager. That's called going through, changing from a boy to a man, trying to understand your place in life. I didn't have a father, so I was trying to figure out what a man was as well, because I had no role models there. So for a 17-year-old to be confused is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
But then if he then believes that me being confused and unhappy is because of these white devils I live with, who are treating me like this and blah, 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 that's an easy road to go down. We have lots of black people who go down that road all the time. That's why we have phrases like white supremacy and white privileged and DEI courses, because it's like, it can't be me as a person who's responsible for my crap life. It can't be my parents who have done a poor job raising me. It can't be my father who's abandoned me. It must be the people I live with. It must be white people, because I've been told that on social media. That is how we get to a man like that doing that, a boy like that doing that. The Asian people at Manchester Airport was something completely different. They were obviously violent, prone to criminality and prone to violence. The story I believe so far to be true is they weren't even on the flight. They were there to pick their mum up. Their mum texted them while she was getting off the plane saying something like, I've had an argument with these people, they've treated me really poorly.
On the plane?
On the plane. So she gets off the plane, departures lounge, her sons meet her, read that message, she points out, and those two lads batter somebody.
Oh, really?
They then walk off. That incident of the head kicking was the car park. They're about to pay for their car park.
Oh, was that a car park?
So I believe
okay.
that was a car parking park.
But the police came there to intercept them after hearing about the attack.
Yeah. I believe the police arrested the other people as well, because I believe they're all as guilty as each other. The police turned up to arrest those two guys, 2 female police officers and 1 male police officer, all armed. And that's when it all kicked off. I would challenge anybody to tell me that would have kicked off if it had been 3 male police officers. It kicked off because
that's a different argument or a
different argument.
Story.
But I think that's why it kicked off, because I don't think they had any respect for those.
And we've talked outside of this episode about female Secret Service, female policemen. So we have thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So it's a good point.
So that scumbag then didn't want to be arrested and started swinging his arms. So that had nothing.
Well, he was beating one policeman very badly. Then he punched a policewoman in the face.
Yep.
You see in the video, and then punched. And they weren't holding back against.
No. They attacked the police severely and with as much violence as they could muster.
Yeah.
This wasn't a disagreement. No, you're not arresting me, officer.
Yeah.
This was like, I'm kicking your face in.
Yeah.
Now that's what happened there.
Now, just interestingly on this one, and I'm going to bring this all back round in the end, because I'm still going to go back to my first point about the fact that all these incidents relate to brown people. I want to bring. It's an important point for me, that, and I'm not going to avoid it. But when you made that video, you made 2 videos about this. One was on Talk Radio, the other one was. Now, what you said is, you felt the policeman was justified in kicking the man in the head, and that's caused controversy. Because my initial thoughts were, and I remain to be persuaded. My initial thoughts were that policemen are trained not to do things like that, even under extreme provocation and attack. But you believe that it's okay.
It's not only okay, it's within the rules. So the police can use force. The police can use excessive force. The police can use deadly force. The only caveat is it has to be justified.
Right.
So we will find out through the procedure, through a court case, whether if it was justified. We don't know at the moment.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
The situation...
His argument being that he wanted to disable this man who'd been threatened, who'd been attacking, causing physical violence. That could be his argument, for example. His
argument will be, we've just been attacked by 2 males. My 2 female colleagues are, to a certain extent, pointless.
Yeah.
Because they've just been beat up.
Well, incapable of assisting me now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's me against him on the floor, and there's one stood right in front of me who was also throwing punches a couple of seconds ago. Yeah. If he gets up, I'm done for.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's down being tased.
Of my life.
He's tased at the moment,
yeah.
But tasing disappears in a couple of seconds. He can jump up now. I can't have him jump up. I've got to deal with this one now. So I'm going to kick him in the head, stamp on his head. That will disable him a little bit longer while my 2 female colleagues jump on him and try to handcuff him, because I've got to deal with this guy now. And that's exactly what the officer did. Kicked him in the head, stamped on his head. The female officers jumped on the guy on the floor, and he moved forward then to the other guy. And then got him on the floor and handcuffed him.
Yeah.
It was distressing to look at. Of course it is. And it needs to be investigated. Of course it does. Because we want to make sure we don't have loose cannons in the police force.
Yeah.
We want to make sure... An excuse for that officer isn't, I was afraid isn't, he just punched my female colleagues. They're not good enough answers to me.
Yeah.
The answer is, I did this because of the situation I was in.
Yeah.
That's acceptable. So I think he did what he needed to do. That had nothing to do with race. Did it have anything to do with culture? Did it have anything to do with what they were Pakistani descent? I would say in a very roundabout way it probably did. For this reason, not because they were brown, not because they were Muslim, but because them and their families haven't lived in this country long enough over centuries to have a lot of that type of behaviour bred out to them. Because in this country, not that long ago, you'd have been shot dead by police for that behaviour. You'd have been hung. You would have not, you'd been locked away forever. We bred out of white English people a lot of these traits of going straight to violence. That doesn't mean white people aren't violent. Of course they are. That doesn't mean white people don't stab people to death. Of course they do. But when you look at the percentages, we bred a lot of this out of the native population in this country. And it took millennia, it took centuries. That type of violence from those young men was perfectly normal if they were in Karachi. Perfectly normal. That's never been normal in my lifetime in this country to act against the police like that. That doesn't mean white people don't do it, because some white people do it.
Yeah.
But it's socially unacceptable.
So let's move on. There's other offences as well. So and I'm mentioning these offences, and I'm again making the point. These are there's a point to this in the end. All these offences I'm talking about have been on the news, even though the mainstream media has tried to suppress a lot of this.
Yeah.
Been on the news, but the English population, the population of the UK, know these were committed by brown people. So there was a soldier stabbed, hacked to death in Kent.
Yeah.
He was killed, wasn't he? I think he did die.
No, he's not died.
He's not died, but he was hacked. He was stabbed 70 times.
Yeah.
In Kent. Again.
By a Nigerian immigrant.
By a Nigerian immigrant. Okay. There was a woman of 62 killed on a canal path in Kent.
By two Somalians.
Mother of 6 by 2 Somalians.
A man and a woman Somalian.
A man and a woman Somalian. So the crossbow killings, I only found out recently, the guy who did that was a Muslim. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I'm not aware of that at all.
Right. So you know the crossbow killing of the BBC presenter?
Yeah.
The guy who did that was, I believe, was a Muslim. Tell me if I'm wrong, readers, but
right.
I'm aware of that. So, and then we've had the Hare Hill riots as well, and there may be, I don't know if there's anything else, but so we're all watching the news.
Well, of course, did you see yesterday in Southend?
Southend, yes, yesterday in Southend.
With it looked like a medieval sword battle.
Yes,
of black people with machetes.
Yes, so there were black people with machetes.
Police stood there and went, "There's nothing we can do."
Well, I don't blame the police.
Oh yeah,
because the guys were running around with massive knives.
Yeah, all of them.
And by the way, in the background, there was a children's fair.
Yeah.
You could hear the kids screaming on the fair rides and things like that. They were doing this literally 100 metres away.
So Southend is a bit like Southport.
Yes.
It's a holiday resort.
Yes, it's a holiday resort, yeah. So I'm going to come on to what happened in Southport last night in a minute. But the point I'm making here is all these events in July, brown people, coloured people, and we know some of them are immigrants, first generation immigrants. So this is you're going through these events one by one, and please carry on. But this is the point I'm trying to make. We're seeing this now, aren't we? We're seeing, and is this what you're seeing as well? Are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
I wrote about this day.
Right.
That the reason why Southport kicked off last night and the Manchester Arena bomber didn't kick off 7 years ago was things have changed. Everyone's eyes are open now.
Yeah.
We can see more violence in our towns and cities, and it's nearly always black and brown people. We look at the newspapers of who's been arrested for rape, murder, fraud, you name it, and they're always foreign-looking people with foreign names, and people are going, this isn't good enough. And that's not to say that all foreign people and all people with foreign names are committing crime, because they're not. But you look at the percentage compared to the native population of the country, and black and brown people and immigrants are dramatically overrepresented in nearly every crime stat you can see in this country and across Europe. And people have got their eyes open now, and we can see it. And
And to some extent, with the greatest of respect, and my dad's from the West Indies, there's always been a higher percentage of crime from West Indians, for example, in this country. I think it's the nature of the crime we're seeing now that is maybe opening people's eyes more. I think
it's not the nature, it's the volume.
Yes, is it the volume?
It's the volume.
Yeah.
Immigrants have always committed more crime.
Yeah.
Because by definition they're always poorer people.
Yeah.
Of the society they've left to come here because they've come for a better life. I'd say every single culture in the world is substandard to the British culture. And in that controversial statement there, I also mean French culture and German culture and Belgian culture.
Yeah.
This is the greatest culture in the world.
Yeah.
So they're coming here with a substandard culture, more prone to violence, more prone to criminality, more prone to fraud. Why? Because they're the countries they came from.
Yeah.
So we've always had more crime from immigrants, but it's the volume now. And the reason why the volume is shot up is because the volume of mass immigration. So we're seeing it more. And because these people are living within communities who find that socially acceptable, there's less constraints for now to be criminals, to do the things they did in the homeland. I would imagine the first wave of immigrants, from the Windrush generation, they were living in streets with white people.
Yeah.
They would have learned, we don't throw our rubbish in the backyard. We don't do this, we don't do that.
And my father was of that generation. My father was actually not somebody who would throw rubbish in, but he was more English than most English people in terms of his behaviours and his culture. But we lived, my parents lived in a street.
Cheek by jowl with white people. A lot of our customs and what to do and what not to would have rubbed off on people. They would have learned it over time. Yeah. Now you move to a community in 9 streets that are all Somalians.
Yeah.
And it's little Somali, it's little Mogadishu, or you're down the road and it's little Bangladesh. And so you're not rubbing up against anybody else. You come over here with your set culture, your set beliefs, your traits, and you live here just like you would have lived in your homeland. So there's no changes anymore. So these types of behaviour that we find wrong and we find criminal are just happening behind closed doors in those communities because it's perfectly acceptable. There was a guy the other day, it was a court case, Bangladeshi man came over here 20 years ago, got an arranged marriage 2 years ago to a 24-year-old. Nice if you can get it at 40. Didn't like her, killed her. I think he chopped her.
Was she
up.
Bangladeshi as well?
Yeah, Bangladeshi. So
this happened in the UK.
All in the UK.
Yeah.
So we're importing violence. We're importing murderers. We're importing the victims of murderers now, and we never did this before.
And I want to talk more about this because last night, can we talk about the Southport riots? So last night, I was disgusted with the television really because the news. Sly News, not Sky News, Sly News. What happened was the actual events that happened last night. This is my understanding of events. There was a vigil for the girls who had been killed.
Yeah.
And by the way, I also want to say now, I don't believe in vigils. I think, people should be angry about this, not holding vigils and candles and all that crap.
I was angry. That's
you were angry. I saw your face on the
I was angry.
Twitter. It's never a pleasure to see your face, but this time when you were angry, it was even worse. But you were furious. I was furious. My wife was furious about this. But the vigil for me is not the answer because
Keir Starmer marching down the road with the chief constable and the police crime commissioner holding wreaths.
Yeah.
And it looked like a PR stunt, and it's like it just.
So you're right, and what he said is we've got to stop knife crime. But for me, this isn't knife crime.
Nothing to do with knife crime.
This is nothing to do with knife crime. This is to do with a far more fundamental problem in our country, and I think that angered people that he wasn't. And there was a guy there bravely shouting out, "What are you going to do? Is it my kids next, Starmer? What are you going to do about it?" Which I thought was great that finally people are doing these things. Anyway, so then the vigil happened, and whilst I don't agree with vigils, of course, I understand people want to express something, and I get that. But what happened was, and this has not been reported on the news, they caught a man.
I saw the video.
You've seen it? Yeah, so the video is available on YouTube, guys, by the way, if you want to track it down. An Indian guy looked like I think he was a Pakistani, literally yards from the vigil with a machete.
Yeah.
So the police found him, caught him, arrested him. Anyway, my understanding is the crowd got wind of this, or potentially there was a second person like this. The crowd got wind of this, and that's when they started to riot against the police, expressing their anger. And you know something?
No, they went to the mosque and started stoning the mosque.
Yeah, and they were throwing, burning cars and stuff. And you know, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hassle for this. I fully endorse their behaviour. I fully understand their behaviour. I understand their anger, and I'm glad that something happened. I'm glad, because one thing about the Manchester bombing, nobody got angry. Nobody went ballistic, rioted, and I realise the police, you know, in these situations become kind of kicking boards for frustration, but it's because they're an element, they're a symbol of authority, and
but they're also part of the problem because they're woke and pink and fluffy.
Yeah. So what really disgusted me was the way mainstream media would not talk about this. Who they started to say, and this isn't, again, first of all they said it was the English Defence League, which is a defunct organisation. Then they said things like, it's not just people from Southport, it's people from neighbouring, like somehow that's a problem. But why shouldn't people from neighbouring towns come and be angry? Why wouldn't? I was angry in Manchester. You were angry in, where I'm not quite sure where you live, but this area here, you were angry. Why wouldn't you, if you're that angry, get in your car and drive to the place where it's happening to express that anger and frustration and annoyance? But they make out like it's some sort of, these people are nothing to do with what's happened here, the tragedy. But they were. These are British people who are sick to death of what is happening in the country, who know that what's happened, who attacking the mosque, you would argue, is not the correct thing to do, but that's effectively that's a symbol of what they're annoyed about. The mosque is that they're taking out their anger on a symbol of and part of the reason I think they're angry, Nick, and part of the reason they were frustrated is because nobody anywhere in the government or the media is saying this has got to stop. You said it on Twitter, you said it, but who else is saying it? People have to go now to you on Twitter, to go to, is it Paul Thorpe, the guy we were talking about earlier, to hear somebody actually articulating what they are feeling. But the government, the authorities are not doing this, are they? And I think that's why that happened last night.
That's exactly why it happened. And the establishment and the elite and the police and politicians have all gone straight to the playbook of how to deal with this. You deal with this by going, white supremacists, EDL, far right, and they've not addressed the underlying issues here at all, which the people are just fed up. People are angry, scared, can see their country dying in front of their eyes, and no one is doing anything about it. I don't condone the violence at all. Violence in these situations is not the answer.
Yeah, but do you condemn it? I don't think you condemn it, do you? You don't condone it, but I think you, like me, don't condemn it because
I think I do. I think I do condemn it, but I can understand why it's happened, and I can even say it will probably do some good, which is an oxymoron. How can I condemn the violence knowing it's going to do some good? Because I think it will wake people up. This is the warning politicians need. They'll ignore it, but this is the warning they need, that we've got a lot more violence coming down the road here because our politicians and government haven't got any politician, any government over my lifetime probably. I'm not just blaming the Labour, just happened to be in power for the last 4 weeks. They've not caused this, Labour. Tories have caused this 14 years.
Yeah. Well,
so
the government. To me, the Tories and Labour are indistinguishable anyway. So
and Labour were the same before the Tories got. So this isn't.
Labour supported all the policies of the Tories, and they're just coming in and carrying on.
Exactly.
So let me run a phrase past you now, which you used, I think, last night and I was watching. I apologise. I'm going to apologise now for something I did. I plagiarised what you did. You wrote a statement, and I thought it was very powerful, and actually copied it. Yeah. And when Paul Thorpe was stating it, I posted it. Now that statement began with three words, and it was "violence is here." Yeah. That's what you said. So you said violence is here. What do you mean by that?
I mean, the British people have had enough. Especially the English. The English have had enough. And they've tried every way they possibly can think of. They voted in every government who's promised to cut migration, and they've all done the opposite. They voted in governments who want to crack down on crime, and crime's getting out of control. They voted in governments who said they'd be patriotic and love this country and let's celebrate this country, and they all do nothing. Everything the British people, the English people have wanted their governments to do and voted him in for that, they've been let down. And now it's got to a stage now where they're not only have they spent decades watching their children being gang raped and never turning violent, watching their children being raped, we're now watching our children being murdered. And not for the first time. It wasn't like, oh, you're killing us now, we're going to fight. No. You killed 22 kids in Manchester 7 years ago.
Yeah.
You've killed other children, you've done this, you've done that. And who do I mean when I say you've done? Well, I don't mean a particular group of people. I don't mean a particular religion. I don't mean a particular ethnic group. I mean you as in the enemies of the English. That's what I mean. And they've seen all this. And I've known for a couple of years now that the next atrocity was going to lead to violence, because I knew we would never react like we did with the Manchester Arena bombing again. I knew that would happen again. I don't know how it didn't erupt then, but we've moved on 7 years since then, and everyone is angry. Everyone's lives, it's not just about the violence, everyone's lives are getting worse. Can't afford housing, and we know it's all down to mass immigration. That's why houses are so expensive. You can't let 10 million people move here in a decade and think and wonder why we've got to short houses. You can't. You must understand that when you've got a supply of cheap labour, that keeps your wages down. So these immigrants, some of them might be working hard, but I'm not being paid the same now because of these immigrants. A government is there to make the people, the citizens of that country's lives better. Our governments for decades now are there to virtue signal across the world that aren't we amazing? You want to come here and we'll put you up, we'll give you free accommodation. NHS is collapsing. Why? We've got 10 million people living here now that weren't here. And those people, some of those people have worse health. We talked about Pakistani inter-cousin marriage and the burden that is on the NHS. We've talked about the knife crime we've imported. That's a strain on the NHS. We've talked about all the domestic violence, murdering partners. These are complicated, but immigrants.
Well, I mean, I was going to talk about this later, but it says a recent in the news last week, offences against women are up by 37% in the last 5 years.
Yes.
Is that a result of?
I would say 100%. That's down to immigration. White British males and non-white British males who have lived here for generations, we all know how to treat women. Not 100% of us. Some of us are still scumbags and some of us were still doing nasty things. But you look over the last 50 years, the number of women killed by partners in this country, the number of domestic abuse, it's been coming down. Deaths by white British males in this country to their partners almost fallen off a cliff. It's almost non-existent. That's why the charities and all that changed the definition of domestic violence and changed it to domestic abuse.
Oh, really?
Because there was no more violence. It wasn't worth having all these charities. We'd almost cured it through social pressure and through good policing and through policies. But we changed it to domestic abuse to also include not giving your wife money, telling your wife she's wrong. All these things now come under domestic...
I'm obviously committing domestic abuse.
I do it 9 times a day. But that all comes under domestic abuse now.
Yeah.
So when you hear figures of domestic abuse, we think it's about a man smacking a woman. It's rarely that now in the white population.
Yeah.
But domestic violence now, we just talked about it. We had that Bangladeshi guy, lived here for 20 years, brings a wife over for 2 years and kills her. You know, all the honour killings, women being killed now by family members, nearly always, Asians and Muslims. Acid attacks on women, nearly always immigrants. All these things we're importing from other countries. And then we're blaming men in this country. And when we say men in this country, what politicians really mean is white men. Look at Jess Phillips, who I can't stand, when she was doing her acceptance speech for winning her seat again at the general election.
Yeah, she was booed, wasn't
almost
she?
in tears, shouted out almost in tears, saying this is the worst election I've ever fought because of men. And she left it at that. What she should have said was, this is the worst election I've ever fought because of all you Pakistani Muslim men who have been harassing me and slashing car tyres and threatening me. But she's too scared to say Pakistani Muslim men. So she goes, men. Because she's a nasty piece of work and she's a misandrist. She hates men. She knew who was targeting her. And it wasn't white English men. It was Pakistani brown Muslim men.
Yeah.
And she didn't have the guts to call it out. That's the problem in this country. You know, that's why we're getting sex attacks. That's why women are being raped. I spoke to a police officer 7 years ago. He said to me unofficially, Nick, when you see who we're arresting for rape, none of them from this country.
Really?
And that was 7 years ago. A Greater Manchester police officer told me that. When you see the people we're arresting...
7 years ago?
We're arresting in Greater Manchester for rape, they're never white English people. This has been going on a long time. But the more mass immigration, the figures now, and we're seeing more and seeing more.
Now, I can guarantee, and hopefully whoever is going to make this comment is watching at this point, I can guarantee somebody will say, as a comment on this video, oh, you're going about Pakistani Muslim men. The guy who killed the 3 children in Southport was a black Rwandan Christian.
Yeah.
Now, I think I know my answer to that. That this is, to me, symbolic of what has happened to the country. It doesn't really matter that he's not a Muslim or that he's not Pakistani. He is a brown man, a product of recent immigration in this country, and he is symbolic of the problem. Is that your view of that? If somebody says, "Oh, you're laying into Pakistani Muslims or Muslim or whatever culture," this guy wasn't even a Muslim. What's your answer to that?
My answer is, I don't blame Pakistani men. I don't blame Muslims. I don't blame black people. I don't blame Africans, because I know lots of those people who are not nutcases and rapists and killers. My argument is, it's mass immigration. You know, in there, I talked about it yesterday. You know, we had I think it was either Polish or Albanian, someone said it was an Albanian woman, a couple of years ago, stabbed a 6-year-old girl to death in a park. Stranger walked up to her and just pulled a knife out and stabbed her to death. She got sectioned. She's going to do life now in a mental institution. She was Albanian or Polish. We've got Polish people committing crime. We had a French guy, about 10 years ago, in a park in, I think it was Disbury or Wivington in Manchester, masturbating in front of children, got arrested, got a slap on the wrist. And when I criticised him online saying he should at least be deported, he's a white French guy, I got criticised by a reporter in the Manchester Evening News, basically saying I was racist for one. And I'm saying, I want all sex offenders, foreign sex offenders, deported.
Yeah.
He's a white French guy. Yeah, he signed a sex register, but I don't want him here anymore now. Deport him. So this has been going on a long time. This isn't about your religion. It's not about your colour. It's not about the country you come from. This is about importing people we don't want into this country, mainly from the third world, but some it's not the third world, like France. But it's about allowing anyone to come here, and once they're here, we can't deport them. We had an Iranian guy a couple of months ago in the news, convicted of rape in this country. We can't deport him. Why? Human rights. Iranians treat rapists really poorly. Well, so they fucking should. And so should we. And we can't deport him because Iranians treat rapists poorly.
Yeah.
This is the mess we're in. It's got nothing to do with religion, race, ethnicity, where you're from. I don't care where you're from. I want less people moving here. I want no people moving here, to be fair. And people who are not British citizens, I want them deported for almost any crime they commit.
So it's an interesting point, and we talked about Calvin Robinson a couple of weeks ago, who's basically now his position is all Pakistani Muslims. And
Foreign born.
No, he didn't say that.
That's what he means.
I watched it again
Right.
because we talked about it.
He must mean...
So he said all Pakistani Muslims should be sent
Yeah.
back to Pakistan.
Yeah.
Let's assume that the riots, and once again I'll say the riots in Southport, I understand fully why they happened.
I know why they happened.
And
Yeah.
I'm not going to condemn them. I'm not going to condemn them. Let's assume that starts to proliferate now. More right. I think violence is here. This is what you said.
Yeah.
This happens. Things start to happen. There's violence or whatever, to the point where the government starts to notice and realise it has to take action, which I think is potentially where this could be heading.
Yeah, I agree.
What can the government do? What a government that's actually stops gaslighting everybody, stops bullshitting, actually accepts the reality of what's happening, as we are seeing in other countries now. We're seeing it now in Germany, Holland, even in France. It's starting to happen now. A government that recognises as a problem. What can it possibly do now? I mean, as you said, we've had 10 million people in the past.
Yeah.
What was it, 5 years or something?
10 years.
10 years. 10 million
10,
people.
15 years. I think
1.2 million net immigration last year.
And 1.1 million the year before.
And 1.1. So there's more people apparently in a decade than in
Ever.
in terms of immigration. What's the answer? How do we fix this?
No one's going to touch this for years. So we have got years of this. The politicians we have at the moment are not capable of addressing this or fixing this, because this is what they do and how they view the world is normal. So what we need is a new generation of politics and politicians coming through. They may be able to tackle this. It's going to be extremely difficult. It's going to be extremely painful. It starts with mass deportation. It starts with, on day one, you say, the new administration, anybody here illegally is deported. We're going to round you all up, put you in camps, and we're going to get you out of here as quick as those planes can be fueled. And those planes will be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're going to deport 1 million people. They reckon there's like 2, 3, 4 million people here illegally.
On top of the 10 million that have come in the past 10 years.
And the reason why we know that, can't remember the exact figure, it was definitely a couple of million. The reason why we know those figures is based on London. So London Water Company has done research about how much waste they're dealing with. And they're saying there's 2 million people living in London that we don't know about. Supermarkets in London, when you analyse their sales, work out there's millions of people living in London that no one knows about because we're selling far too much bread, far too much pasta, far too much rice. So all these things have been looked at. This is all in the press if you do a bit of research. This isn't me making up.
Yeah.
It's all out there.
Yeah.
So there's millions of people who we don't know are living here.
So they compare the census to the actual waste produced.
Yes.
And they know,
exactly.
there's 3 million more people than they thought. Yeah.
So we need mass deportation of everyone here illegally. And in that I also include asylum seekers and refugees. We need to pull out the Convention of Refugees and Asylum Seekers and we say no more. What we're going to do now is if there's a war in, let's use European country, there's a war in Spain, civil war in Spain, they're killing each other with chorizo sausages.
It did happen.
Yeah, it did, yeah. And millions of people have now crossed over into Portugal. Well, we're going to take none of yours, but do you know what? We're going to send some aid. Because the stats I read is it's 100 times cheaper to look after somebody in a neighbouring country than it is to bring them to the UK and look after them. So every one person, asylum seeker, refugee, we bring here, we could have helped the same standard 100 in a neighbouring country where they fled to.
That's interesting.
So there's some cost benefits there.
Yeah.
So let's stop bringing them here. I want to help people, of course, when they're starving, fighting. I don't want people dying if they can help it. So let's do that. Let's stop bringing asylum seekers, refugees, illegal immigrants here. Anyone who comes here gets deported. Then we need to look at foreign-born British citizens in this country. And we need to look at them and we need to evaluate. I don't know what the matrix will be. I have to give a lot of thought. But one of the matrix will be, are you a criminal? So since you've been here, Yeah, you weren't born here, but now you've married to an English woman or an English guy. You've got children here who are British citizens. You've got a British passport now, but you've been convicted of bank robbery. You've been convicted of rape. You've been all those British citizens who are foreign born, who have a criminal record, I would deport in the second month of my administration. All the illegals go first month. The second month, all them go. What we do after that is very hard to think, but it will evolve around, I've said this so many times before, it revolves around trying to build one nation. One nation, I feel like America then, one nation under God.
That's what Trump is doing, isn't it? That's all he's talking about.
Yeah, I want one nation in this country under one monarch. Because that's the soul of our nation, is the monarchy.
Yeah.
We may not like our monarch sometimes, we may think they're stupid, and the current one is. But we need one nation under one monarch. The monarchy is the story of the UK. That is our story. Yeah. It's a living story of our traditions, our history. So we need...
And what's happening in America is effectively Trump is taking on a monarchical role, isn't he? He's effectively coming in as a king, isn't he?
That's what the president is. It's their monarch.
Yeah.
So that's going to take decades to do. And the simple things, I've said this before so many times. Picture the monarch in every school, in every council building. If any building is funded by government money, there's a picture of the monarch there. And also outside, a Union Jack flag.
Yeah, next to the litter bin where the children have to be forced to pick up the litter to tidy up.
And never let me forget that.
No. I know what kind. I know what kind of monarch you'd be.
So that's the long-term plan. We've got to bring people together. I mean, you can still be a Christian, a Muslim, an atheist, still be gay. You can still be whatever you want to be. I don't care. But that's all private.
Yeah.
So, I don't want you ramming down, you're a Christian, down my throat when I'm out in public.
Yeah.
I don't want you ramming down my throat. Well, it's the wrong example now if you're gay.
If you're gay, yes.
So all these things need to change. They're your differences that you celebrate and practice in your family, with your community, But everything else, would I make it illegal? No. But I would make it a faux pas. I would make it socially unacceptable to support any foreign sports team apart from England, Ireland, Wales, Northern Ireland and the UK.
Because you're not really that interested in sport, you don't realise what you're asking there.
No, but that's the spirit we need to break of the people in this country to make sure we're all under one flag, one nation.
But I think there's little...
I'm sure we can have second teams.
Yes.
Like, do you know what? There's lots of people who support Argentina. Not Argentina's a bad example, but will support.
Are you talking about national teams? Because I think on football teams, it's perfectly acceptable to support a foreign football team like Real Madrid or PSG.
Because most of the players are not even Spanish
correct.
anyway.
Yeah.
I'm talking about national teams. I'm talking
teams,
about when England play India.
Yeah.
It should be socially unacceptable for someone living in this country to say, "Come on, India."
Yeah.
Not because it's against the law, because I don't want laws interfering in this, because then it's just becoming an authoritarian state. But it should be socially unacceptable.
And I agree with that. And when I was younger, I always supported England. But as we discussed in the recent Euros, because of all the crap messaging, race grifting and everything else, I almost wasn't supporting England.
Well, I didn't support England. Yeah. I didn't.
But you've not done it since the knee thing, have you?
Yeah, but I didn't then go and support another team.
No, that's true. That's true. Well, I was kind of supporting Portugal because my kids are quarter Portuguese and Anna's half Portuguese.
Right.
Can I just end this section?
Yeah.
You talked about this new government, this new regime or whatever. Yeah. The question I want to ask, and I'll just preface this with a little bit of narrative, is who is going to lead us? Because we are seeing people now emerging, and I mentioned Paul Thorpe to you, who's he's a social commentator, so he's not a leader per se, but he's a very big supporter of Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
We saw Tommy Robinson down in London this weekend. I don't know if you went, Nick. I thought you might have gone. There's something like 50,000 people there, and I can't remember what the terminology was, but it was about British supporting British flags or whatever.
Photos and videos were fantastic.
Yeah, and that was fantastic. 50,000, but there was no violence or whatever. Tommy Robinson showed a video during that. He was arrested after the thing for
contempt of court.
Well, it was terrorism offences. They've accused him of terrorism offences. Now, we find Tommy Robinson, who leads a march, a peaceful march in London, shows a video being arrested for that. We find the Manchester attackers, the ones who got kicked in the head, released on bail and sent home immediately after the attack. So we have people now who are trying to make a difference, who are maligned, attacked, arrested. I mean, this is reminiscent of a totalitarian state here.
Yeah.
People who are opposing the government, who are not doing anything wrong, are now being arrested, imprisoned multiple times. This has happened multiple times to Tommy Robinson. We've got Nigel Farage, who, despite getting 4 million votes, only got 4 seats in 5 seats in Parliament. Tommy Robinson is trying to make things happen. By the very nature of his history, his articulation or whatever, maybe he's not that person. Farage potentially has the skills. But interestingly, when I was watching Paul Thorpe last night and people were angry about these children dying, they were saying, when is Farage going to actually come out and support us? So the people who have these views, your and I views, are saying that Farage is not actually coming out and saying the things he should be saying. So we've got Farage there who's being careful in what he's saying. We've got Tommy Robinson who maybe not the right person. Who is the person who's going to emerge? And we discussed this before. I'm asking the question again now because we are actually seeing people emerging. Who is going to emerge and make this difference? Who is going to become the Nick Buckley who will do that in his first month, that in his second month?
We've not heard of that person yet.
Right.
That person exists.
Yeah.
And is hopefully in the pipeline coming through somewhere, but we've not heard the name of that person. It won't be Tommy Robinson. He's got far too much baggage. He's got the right message. He's the wrong messenger because he's easily dismissed because of his past. Nigel Farage is playing it safe, which is understandable because he's already got the baggage of being accused of being a racist, a this, a that. He's trying to tread the fine line of doing what he wants to do, but knowing he's going to be attacked for everything he does, and he doesn't want to give his enemies more ammunition against him. That's why he won't attend any Tommy Robinson march. That's why Reform and before that UKIP would never allow Tommy Robinson to join the party. They're the only two parties in the country that do not allow English Defence League members to join. Complete ban on that because he knows he will be attacked. Farage knows he'll be attacked.
But Farage won't also say what we're saying today, or what you just said.
He is. He's playing the political game because he's a politician, and we forget sometimes he was in European Parliament for 14 years. Yeah. He's a politician. He's playing the balancing game. I don't know if it's the right strategy or not. What do I know about politics? I've never been elected. I've tried but not been elected. Of any of these people at the moment, same with the Conservative Party, with the Conservative Party leadership at the moment, does it matter who gets elected leader? No, it doesn't, because none of them will ever be Prime Minister. They're just the next step before they find someone they've never heard of to lead the party. And it's same with how the country is changing now. We don't know who that leader is going to be, but somebody will come through and somebody will grasp that mantle and run with it. But it'll be no one we've heard of at the moment, because everyone we've heard of at the moment is tainted by this because they've never done enough, because people like Farage haven't talked about it enough. People in Parliament, especially if you've been in Parliament longer than 6 weeks, which means you're one of the old school. And what were you doing in Parliament all those years? You're all tainted. So I don't know who the leader will be, but no one heard of Thatcher until she became Tory leader. No one thought she was going to win the Tory leadership race, and no one thought she'd be Prime Minister. So there will be someone out there who will hopefully surprise us, but who that is, I don't know.
Okay. Nick, well, just hopefully you'll be involved in that in some way, and now that your profile is increasing, as we've discussed, that could be the case. So Nick Buckley, MBE, thank you very much.
Thank you much. Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers, I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.